Let's move straight into our next panel discussion of the day, and the topic this time is business sustainability, turning ESG into a value-creating function. And to conduct this session, I'm going to invite on stage our esteemed panelists. We have with us today Mr. Swarup Mohanty, CEO, Mire Asset Investment Managers India Private Limited. Please put your hands together for Mr. Mohanty. Ms. Monica Srivastava is Head Sustainability at JSW Cement. Ms. Seema Pavaskar is Deputy General Manager CSR and ESG at Crompton Greaves Consumer Electricals Limited. And Mr. Yugal Sikri is Managing Director, RPG Life Sciences Limited. And to moderate the discussion, I welcome on stage Mr. Nitish Malhotra. He's India Partner Sustainability and ESG at EY. A warm welcome to all of you. Please give our panelists a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. Over to you, Mr. Malhotra. Have a good one.
All right, thank you everyone and welcome to this very diverse, esteemed panelists, I must say, diverse in many senses, representing many sectors as you can see. I think just before I start, I just want to set a little bit of refresh for all of you in terms of why we are here and why we are talking about, as many would argue, a very complex, interdependent topic. But truth be told, I think unless you think otherwise, climate change and social inequity are the biggest challenge our world is facing, right? And at the heart of it is the global warming, which we all know in terms of what's happening. Some 20,000 scientists have been researching this for last 30 odd years, if you were to see, and saying that the world is warming because of carbon emissions and human activity. Right now, if you were to look at the global compass, we are at about 1.2 degrees Celsius of heating above pre-industrial levels, and the scientists who have been researching this has put us on code red for many years now, and saying if we were to cross 1.5 degree or 2 degrees Celsius temperature rise from pre-industrial level, which was what was agreed in Paris, if you know, in the UN Climate Change Conference in 2015, we would be in uncharted territories. I think we all know we are seeing the impact of climate change in terms of the risks that it's posing. And so that's, I think, at the heart of it. Many people argue in saying where this word ESG come from. ESG, just to refresh everyone's memory, is environment, which is a lot about climate action, which is about carbon, water, circularity. Social is a lot about human capital. It's not just about CSR and human rights. What do we do about our people? And then governance, right, which is the tone at the top. Many people would argue that environmental and social are goals. Without governance, we can't really achieve those goals, right, the tone at the top. And I think that's where this word ESG, which was coined in 2005, by United Nations, and that's how this word has been emerging. So in a way, ESG is about, as I always say, 18 years old. It's like a teenager. It behaves sometimes, it misbehaves sometimes, right? So I think that's just to set a little bit of the context and the importance of this discussion that we would have, and we would try to probe some of these discussions, and at the end of it we will have a Q&A with all of you so that you could raise some of your perspective and questions. So Yugal, just you sitting here, I'll start with you in order of preference as we move along. So the first point to think about is, as we look at sustainability and ESG, is it a risk or an opportunity, as you see it?
Thanks for a very, very fundamental question. And to my mind, we all know ESG, we all know sustainability now. Enough has been talked about it. As you rightly asked me a question whether it's a risk and opportunity, is from the vantage point we look at it. We consider this as something compulsorily we have been asked to do, we should comply to do it, or it makes holistic sense for a company or an organization to look at it. And I can tell you, having experienced it myself in my organization, in the group I represent, it has made a sea change in the perspective the way we look at sustainability or ESG or whatever the name you call it. The ESG or sustainability is, as the word connotes, sustainable. Something which will make the business, the operations, the work we are doing sustainable beyond a day, beyond a month, beyond a year, or beyond decades. I think it is, fundamentally speaking, the concept of sustainability. And I come from pharmaceutical sector, and I can give you the example of pharmaceutical sector. In pharmaceutical sector, we are responsible for, do I have a time? Few minutes to talk about? Okay. So in pharmaceutical sector, we deal with a product which is called medicine, which is designed for a very substantive effect, which could be a clinical effect or which could be a side effect, either of the two. And therefore, this product is so very important for the health and the safety or the well-being of a human being. The product is highly regulated, from processes to the end product. Not only we leave there, till the time the product reaches the end consumer, the patient, the product is extremely controlled. And if I give you the context of India, and we are largely in the generic market, we call it branded generic market, it is extremely competitive. For one molecule, you have 300, 400 competitors available, and there's no big differentiation in the product. And to top it all, since it is medicine, it is meant for the end consumer called patient, the severely price controlled. So in the context of pharmaceuticals, I very dogmatically say that it is an opportunity. It is not a risk. And maybe I can answer completely here, or I can answer in your next question, but I need to elaborate right from product design, from R&D up to the consumption.
Right, cradle to cradle.
Patient. Yeah. how sustainability makes a perfect sense. Maybe I stop here and answer your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Vipul. Good to know that in a highly regulated, price competitive market, as you said, you still see as an opportunity. Seema, I'll turn to you with a similar question. I know you represent the consumer business. How do you view it? How does your organization or your sector view it in terms of risk and opportunity?
It all depends on which lens and who is looking at it. Because you are specifically to the consumer sector, it is a huge opportunity because customers are expecting us to produce more sustainable products, apart from what the investors are asking for it, and all we know that regulators are looking at us, especially when you are the listed company. From risk point of view, also there are few things that we need to see. For example, now I'm talking about sustainability with the plastic bottle. So it all depends. But yes, there's an opportunity to secure more funds from investor, gain more customer size. And when I say customers, because we are in consumer electrical, so now we know that even customers are changing. They are not just looking at fan or bulbs, but there are so many other product lines are there. So they are more educated, well informed. So we need to produce those kind of products. So there's an opportunity, and also not just from outside world, but inside also, because it also helps us, to see a supply chain, to revisit the way we used to, source material. So there's a lot of savings. There's a savings in time. There's a good quality coming up. Of course, all boil to the bottom line and the branding and reputation also. So we see that it's a huge opportunity. Irrespective of customers are asking, we need to produce.
So Seema, that's very helpful. And just curious to know, and in the conversation we were having earlier, in a premium segment market, may not be mass market, do you think consumer is willing to pay more if you could charge more? Are you seeing some data, or is the data not clear yet at the moment?
The data is not clear. We have data, but it's more for the international consumers, not really in Indian market segment. I think we are still growing in this segment.
Right.
However, why we are investing into this segment, as I was explaining, why we are investing into fans division and in innovation, to just ensure that we are future ready. Because what we know that yes, after like 5 or 10 years down the line, definitely customers are going to ask question, and not that,
your brand.
and not just a premium category, but below that also.
Category, yeah.
So that we know, we are very informed about it. The reason why even we are investing more into that.
Also future proofing.
Yeah, so be prepared for the future. Yeah.
Absolutely. Monica, turning to you, I know you represent hard to abate sector. So how do you see in cement? I know it's very critical for India Inc. and also the infrastructure to develop. It's a tough sector to mitigate. So how would you view it from your sector standpoint?
Okay, so I would take it as, I would probably talk from my own personal point of view as well as sector point of view. So sustainability is a risk as well as an opportunity. It depends at how do you see it. And I think that it's not just the sustainability. Every risk, even if it is a business risk, how do you turn that risk into an opportunity? That matters. For example, for cement, if I say that coal availability or coal price is a risk, yeah. Now all the cement companies are using industrial waste to replace that coal, to turn around that risk into an opportunity, and that is now gaining momentum. And for that, now there is one more opportunity coming around, that you have MSW waste, municipal solid waste, or the RDF waste, which is a legacy waste. You see so many landfills in Mumbai, you would see landfill. Now what people are doing, that they are taking out this legacy waste and yet they are segregating it, and the combustible fraction they are sending it to all the cement companies. So that is a risk which has been turned into an opportunity. Another example I can give you, JSW Cement. I would give an example of JSW Cement because the inception of this company itself is based on the philosophy of circular economy. So JSW Steel was producing huge amount of slag. That was a risk kind of thing. So you would see mountains of slag which was being stored at steel premises. And in 2005, the founders of the JSW group thought that why don't we have a cement company which can use this waste and now
circular business
yes
model.
And so circular business model, and how that has gained benefit for us today, because 90% of our product portfolio is based on the GGBS slag, granulated blast furnace slag, and because of that now our CO2 emission intensity is standing around 200 kg per ton. Just to give you the context around CO2 emission intensity, in cement sector, the average, global average stands around 585 kg per ton of cement, cementitious material. National average in India, this average would be around 540, and we stand around 200. And I am giving you 200. In fact, last year we scored 173 kg, but I wouldn't take it as a comparative number because of some shutdown.
Right.
But now, today we are just 1/3 of the global emission intensity, and that's just because of the circular economy. So again, the risk turned into an opportunity. So in cement sector, I can give you many examples where all the risk have been turned into an opportunity, and I think that this would be applicable to many sectors.
Yeah.
So
That's a very good perspective, Monica. I think we have to look at it, I think as all the panelists said, that how can we turn risk into opportunity and create competitive advantage, right, of this. Swaroop, coming to you, obviously you scan a lot of these companies, you run an ESG fund, one of the only funds, as you were saying, or the earlier funds. How do you see companies and how do you scan them in terms of sustainability perspective? And also I think if you can give some perspective, one is in terms of scanning, the other is how do you see these sustainability companies from a financial performance? Is there a correlation or a causation that you see?
Yeah, I mean, at this moment when I sit with practitioners, always a learning for guys like us, because see, there are two sides to it.
Yeah.
From their perspective, they will practice something which will become sustainable. And when you look at it in the name itself, any organization which does not take cognizance of the society around them and the environment cannot be sustainable. The definition is plain English, and it's very plain enough for all of us to understand.
Yeah.
When you practice this over a period of time, it becomes sustainable and the data starts throwing up. For investors like us, it becomes responsible investing is what is the term used globally. So if there are two companies which are giving similar returns or similar profits or whatever, and one is compliant on ESG and one is not, the automatic choice should be the ESG company is the way we look at. But when you look at this percolating over a period of time, there is this firm belief that a ESG practitioner will become a far better organization, will become far efficient as an organization. Now, when you look at the people in those companies, since they will have a purpose of being this socially responsible company, the purpose of working will be far superior. All this adds to efficiencies, which takes time, right? At this moment, when the discussion is whether it's a risk and opportunity, just shows that all this is at a nascent stage. It's just a matter of time when all these factors start weighing down. And look at Mumbai now. We are all talking about air quality. All this is already around us. It just takes some time first to believe and to internalize. Once we start internalizing, and as investors, we start asking all of them the question, then this completely changes. When as fund managers or as analysts, we give the ESG score a far higher importance in our assessment of an investment decision, everything changes. And that's what's happened in developed countries led by Europe, which was impacted by ESG the maximum, and where the investor wants it. See, this can happen two ways, and sir, correct me if I'm wrong, all of you correct me if I'm wrong. The regulator might say it, or the government might say it, or as a consumer I demand it. The consumer has to demand it, and it's just a matter of time that will happen, and then this debate whether it's risk or this thing will all be dead meat, and that it's a reality and practiced by every business. And see, one major part, is that, sorry, I'm taking a little bit of time, but fact is all this leads to better corporate governance. And let's face it, if there's one country which needs desperate improvement on corporate governance, it is India. Right? And that's how we view it. We really view it very positively, and we hope and pray that it's practiced very efficiently and the data will play out in the next decade. We have no doubt or debate on that one.
So the G part you're saying is definitely helping, certainly, right?
No, see, from an investment perspective, see where it starts. When we look at a stock, and that's what we invest in on the equity side, until now, our analyst pool can sort of comprehend the balance sheet, the kind of profits the company is making, and by meeting the top management, we sort of figure out what the governance is. And there's a track record of. But whether it starts the S&G side, which is the social side and the environment side, there is no analyst to sort of assess that. That's where this entire ecosystem is now being built. We have to have a separate set of analysts who have the capability. And when I was talking to her, she said she's already spent 16 years in sustainability. I was just thinking, who in 16 years ago thought that this would be a career point? But that's where analysts now start. And this environment will get, and don't mistake the Indian brain on adapting to this very quickly. In the next 5 years, you will have a set of analysts who will be able to assess them and tell us for sure whether this data is for real or there's a lot more to be done.
No, I think that's a good point, Swaroop, you raised. I think one is the maturity obviously will evolve data, right? How do you interpret the data more importantly, and how the frameworks and the languages, and I know earlier we were talking about these rating agencies, how should they be assessing and how to interpret, I think more importantly, because eventually it has to be, I think some objectivity, there will be subjectivity, I'm sure, because not everything can be graded in a score, but I think we need both quantitative and qualitative, to your point. But I think it's good to know now that we have set up that, in a way, I think everyone said it's non-negotiable in many ways. It's future-proofing our organization, and also, I think from different stakeholders, right? Because I think what we heard is investors, we heard customers, right? Because the customers will start demanding, and many people would say that there is a recognition towards the society, right? The communities that the organization service, and where we are taking a lot of environmental and social capital, right? Which is where we need to be doing. So I'll shift gears a little bit to a little bit more, nuance to it, and saying, look, if it is to be done, right? I'm sure certainly some trade-offs, right? It can't be everything perfect, right? Sounds too good to be true. So maybe some sense from all of you, and Yugal, again, I'll start with you, that where do you see the trade-offs or the challenges, right, in terms of as we do this, right? And what are the critical success factors to get it right? Because there, I'm sure some trade-offs will be there, if not in the long term, certainly in the short and medium term.
Yeah. I think you talked about trade-offs. It means there is an upside and there is a downside. The point which I made earlier, and I think I must elaborate upon, for a very highly controlled product like pharmaceuticals, how it could be an upside. And necessarily we have to view this from the upside perspective. And then you will see upside. You sort of have glass half full, half empty. If you continue focusing on half empty part, you will see only the emptiness. If you look at the full side, in a panel discussion like this, I would like to look at from the full side. Now, coming back to the pharmaceuticals. Now, sustainability has to be, to my viewpoint, to be the way we talk about quality by design. I use a word called sustainability by design. Whenever I'm starting a new business, whenever I'm setting a new factory, when I'm launching a new product, whenever I'm entering to a new market, I need to be sustainable there, and then go back to the sustainability practices. New product, pharmaceuticals, supposing it's an R&D which is launching a product. If the product is having a shelf life of 36 months, or 48 months, or 60 months, is that making it more economic sense versus a product which has 18 months shelf life or 12 months shelf life? And I'm telling you real, when we develop the product, we get a 12 month shelf life. If we get 18 month shelf life, excellent. If we move to 24 months, very, very good. It's very difficult to go to 36 months and 48 months. What
thereby reducing the wastage. Is that your point?
Reducing a wastage. Otherwise, 18 months later, if your demand forecasting is not good, you're wasting the product. So if sustainability is inbuilt into the design stage by selecting the right material, right?
But can some companies, Yugal, I'll challenge that and say, look, if it expires quicker, I have more demand, right? And therein, is there a trade-off that you see with you or your competitors for that matter?
I should share with you, it's a colossal loss. 8 to 10% of the products are getting expired from a good company on the shelf, which is a huge economic value. Huge economic value. If that takes place, very good. Your customer, your patient, if he's buying a tonic, a painkiller, or a cough syrup, he will buy more if the shelf life is good. Otherwise, it will expire. So if you want a patient or a prescriber for a long term, you must have a product with a longer shelf life. Makes sense. It makes sense if we are making our processes, our ingredients, our APIs, which are higher shelf life. Second, higher batch size. If I am able to produce a higher batch size, I think it makes economic sense for me, because all my testing, if it just open 3 times, will happen only once.
More efficient.
It makes economic sense for me. It is also more sustainable. In supply chain, for example, if I have a product which is my supply chain is robust enough to indicate that my product is being stored at a temperature of 2 degrees. If the product needs a 2 degree storage condition, I know the product is going to be good, it will work. There will be doctor loyalty, there will be patient loyalty, because the patient is eventually getting treated. This is also part of sustainability. Supply chain also become part of the sustainability. Coming to the last bit, which is the patient and the doctor. If the doctor does a responsible prescribing, if a seller does a responsible selling, and if a consumer or a patient does a responsible consumption, I think it is in the interest of themselves. If he does responsible prescribing, I just give you an example of antibiotics. Our country has the biggest, is considered to be the center of infections globally. We sell highest numbers of the pills which are antibiotics. Indiscriminate use of antibiotic has left us to a situation that you don't have an antibiotic when there is multi-resistant bugs which are there, because of the irresponsible prescribing by the physician. If that doesn't happen, you have a product on a sustainable basis and you will sell for a longer period of time. As a consumer, if I'm being told you take medicine for 5 days, I must take the medicine for 5 days. It's a responsible consumption. At the customer level, if I'm able to do a demand forecasting properly and able to manufacture the product in that big batch sizes, it is good for me. So responsible prescribing, responsible manufacturing, responsible selling and marketing, and responsible consumption is making an economic sense. Now, from the downside perspective, yes, if you have to invest in certain technologies in the beginning, in packaging, you can, whether you use PVC or PVDC you take, or you initially have meter dose inhaler, or you have a dry powder inhaler, I think economics would be in favor of the meter dose, not in favor of the dry powder. But if you opt for dry powder, which is a sustainable packaging material, it makes economic sense because you are avoiding the wastage of the pack, and in this case you use the pack for a long time, because every time you have to buy a capsule and put into the small machine or small plastic device which is available to you. To my mind, it makes economic sense. Yeah, initial costs are there. When you do your sums, I've done sums for setting up a new plant. I'm setting up a plant now in API as well as the finished formulation business. Strict instruction is it should be sustainable, because my finance guy, CFO, has done his ROI sums and proved that it makes sense if we have a sustainable word attached to any material we buy, any design we create, any process we finalize.
So looking at comprehensive, I think that's great to hear, Yugal. I think especially from a CEO who's looking at the entire vantage point, and I think the point that you said, sustainable by design, I really like it. And also, I think point you're making is it has to be looked holistically, right? Because if you look at a pocket, it may yield, but the only point I would say is that in a very competitive industry, as you said, you can't really pass on any price hikes to your consumers, right? Because, or will the consumer be willing to pay for a more sustainable packaging in your medicine? I think that's tough, or I don't know how you view it in India or globally.
No, I fully take it, and that's where we have a responsibility to communicate and convince regulator.
Yeah.
In our case, it is NPPA, National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, which should be the one.
Are they sustainable by design in their thinking?
No, I think I must not be too pessimistic. I was pessimistic because they created a special category that if you do some such design which is patient friendly, we will give you special price. It never happened. Not even a single product got the special pricing. But I see the wind changing in Delhi, and
more awareness.
And the authorities are more they are listening to you, they are reasoning it out, and they are considering. So I'm optimistic for the future. So far, I agree with you that there is no special consideration we have got in pricing for any of those initiatives. Therefore, as a CEO, I am pushing it as something which makes economic sense, or financial sense to us. And just to sum up and tell you that we feature as one of the value creators in the top 500 list, and I think to some extent I can give credit to the sustainability which has been inbuilt into the whole dynamics from R&D, manufacturing, supply chain, and sales and marketing, and to some extent I feel that is also responsible for.
That's great. Well, good to know. So there we have a good example, real life example of creating value, leading by sustainability, and I think coming from a CEO, absolutely, I think that's great to hear. Seema, coming to you, obviously you're a listed company, a lot of pressure, you need to be thinking different things. So are there any trade-offs that you see, internal, external, and how do you kind of mitigate those challenges, if any?
Yes, we have. And in my view as a practitioner, what I've seen, not external, but internally, the clarity. Of course, now we have answer whether to do this or not. So answer is yes, it's non-negotiable. We have to do this. The question is how and what are we going to do, because there are too many things to do. So what? After that, again, the question is, there's a lot of confusion in the sector itself, because sustainability itself is vast subject, and there are too many things are there. That is A. So what to pick? B also, the business goals
Yeah.
are priority on the priority list. So whether the ESG goals are whether aligned to them and how to align them. So I remember personally when I told you I was in Tata Power, I was just like a manager level, a very small level. But my KRAs were linked to business goals of the company. So if I fail in a parameter, I know my company will fail on sustainability metrics. So that is one. Second also, the operational challenges that we have, that we all work in silos, you know. And in ESG, data is the key, just to see, before we do anything, just to see data. And so the integration part, because ESG could be, at least for now, it's a priority for all, but at least few years ago, it was not priority for others. So that was a big challenge. It's like a headache.
Yeah.
Or I'll be very honest with you, especially with the
absolutely.
supply chain where you have 50 plus SKUs and when you have like 500
Large
plus
complex organizations.
500 plus suppliers, across the globe. So it's very difficult, to tell them to what to do. So yes, but there's a lot of clarity in thoughts, of course, and B is intention. And you will agree with me, with the ESG sustainability, there's a lot of window dressing also is possible.
Yeah.
And just think beyond tick mark activity, if you do that. So the realization of, if we do this, more into this, it's going to help us only commercial. It's going to hit our bottom line.
Yeah.
Because then we know that we have trained, efficient human resource, efficient supply chain. We have a products which are future ready. So all those things. And of course, we have to look into the peers also.
Yeah.
Not just keep doing sustainability all the time. Yeah.
You also need to benchmark yourself where others are, right? So that you know where your pecking orders are. I think very pertinent points, Seema, as you said. One is sustainability is everyone's business, right? It's a team sport. Every function has to support. Otherwise, one siloed function can't do. And I think the important point, and we will probe a little bit further as we go along, on data, right? Because there has to be single version of truth. Otherwise, there's a lot of subjectivity. And I think talking about data, especially on the supply chain and others, I think is obviously a humongous task. And I think the point that you made on greenwashing is also very, very important, that what you say. Monica, interested your perspective on that.
Yes, I mean, I wouldn't call it as a trade-off as such, but I can give you a challenge which we are facing. Previously I said that 90% of our slag can be termed as low carbon product because they are slag based. However, 10% is what we call as OPC, ordinary Portland cement. And that has a very big market, though we do not produce much. So now and OPC, if I compare, so OPC has almost double the carbon footprint of what we are producing, 90%. So overall, we want to reduce our OPC portfolio gradually over the years. However, the demand of OPC is kind of increasing in some of the states. So now we can't help it. I mean, we ask our sales team to sell more PSC or more low carbon, but then they say that if there is a demand, we can't stop that. We can't upset our customer if they are demanding for OPC. So that's the one challenge. And now what we are trying to address that challenge, that we are trying to advocate not at many forums, especially the government projects, to promote the green procurement policy, so that there is a demand of greener products. And to start with, it should be, I mean, you see so many infrastructure in Mumbai, everybody would see that all roads are dug up, right? So what we want, that if there is an increased demand from starting with the government projects itself, that if we are building a highway or something, we want at least 20% of the material should be sustainable. And if that comes from the government, probably the private builders would anyway follow. And on second part, you would find many builders and big developers who also have a shared vision of reaching net zero buildings. So we are reaching out to them because we know that if we want to sell our products which are greener, so there is a market for that. So they would probably prefer, because they want to meet their own target. Now, when Sir spoke about this, that medicines getting expired and then that waste, I mean, that's a waste of resources. But I understand, and that's very well justified. And for cement also, it's not a big problem. But what I see for many sectors, in a way, for example, for phones, I'm sure many of us would have bought phones in last 1 year. And if I ask you that who needed it, nobody probably, I mean, you don't just, the phone doesn't get wasted in 1 year. But still there is an increased demand. And just imagine the kind of resources which are getting wasted. I mean, as per one data I read some days ago, in last year almost there were 1.7 billion of new phones which were sold in last year. Can you believe it? 20% of the total world population has bought a phone. I mean, and that's ridiculous. I mean, we are wasting so many resources. So I just feel that probably we are turning that luxury in a need, as a need, that it's needed. It's not just as a luxury. So same as with clothes, same as with phone. I mean, that's though I just diverted from the topic, but I strongly feel.
No, that's I think a very important. Topic,
that's
right,
why I just said it. Thank you.
The whole aspect of circularity and obviously responsible consumption.
Yes.
In a way that you're saying, and also I think it's also a trade-off.
Yes.
So just curious, Monica, is there? I think you alluded to low carbon, cement, but is there something called green cement? Is that emerging? Is there a definition? Just maybe some perspective, because I know the same discussion is on green steel. Would it emerge, and how would it really be classified and quantified?
So green cement, if you Google it, you wouldn't find a specific definition. However, like I said, OPC is an ordinary Portland cement, which doesn't have any kind of byproducts. Normally, in most of the cements, you would find some slag or fly ash. Normally, those blended cement are called low carbon or the green cement. However,
globally, is there a definition of green cement in developed countries, Europe?
No. So there is no universal definition of green cement, but low carbon cement you would find it, and that depends when you say that if there is a 35% lesser carbon emission than the conventional product, you can call it as a low carbon cement, and that percentage also differ. I mean, from country to country, but still it's not yet fixed up.
Right. And would you say, just curious, any other country in developed countries, US, Europe, or any other geographies, have they perfected the cement technology better, where they're able to capture carbon? And is that working, you think, or is that in India is at the same level? That's what I'm trying to understand.
No. So carbon capture, I mean, that's the last lever which and most important lever for achieving the net zero status in the hard to abate sector. So CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage. In India, it's a very, very nascent stage. Abroad, you would still find, at least in cement sector, you would find hundreds of projects which are in the piloting stage. Some have already started, but still, I mean, kind of capital capital you needed.
The economics will not work.
Also, you are not sure of the, you are not guaranteed with the results also, because over the years, you will only get to know after 10-15 years that whatever capex you have invested, has it actually resulted in something, significant reduction. That also you don't know. So in India is a very, very at a nascent stage.
I think cement is a tough sector, but I think we need a lot of it, because a lot of country needs to be built.
Cement, steel, chemicals, all these are hard to build sector. Thank you.
So Roop, turning to you, and I want to broaden it a little bit, just not from your portfolio standpoint. I think to say that, there is a view saying if we were to just look from sustainability, we may lose companies who may be better and we may not invest given the view that you take. So do you see at times a trade-off in that sense, that some companies which may give you better financial returns, right? But you not able to, or investors are not able to put money because of responsible investment, as you say. So do you see that trade-off? And I know that view is a little bit more nuanced in US, and there are a lot of people who are a little bit against it also. So some perspective from investment community, how do different investors see it on this very complex debate that goes on?
It's a good question. In my mind, there is no debate. But in general, doing good will lead to better profits. Does not go hand in hand.
Will go hand in hand.
Does not go.
Does not.
I will do something nice, and it will lead to profits. normally is not associated in the area of business.
Yeah.
You know, that's the premise where it starts from. If we do ESG, it can be a cost.
Yeah.
Where will this cost come from? Is a normal question. But by practicing ESG, that it will lead to efficiency will take time for everybody to understand. Okay. And then the person who understands it earlier will stand to make money by investing in those companies earlier. The price discovery happens earlier if you start believing in these processes.
Yeah.
Once the environment builds up, let's face some facts, forget investing, okay.
Yeah.
It's one thing I will request all of you is, one is about practicing ESG, the other is about communicating ESG.
Yeah.
And I think the entire environment owes it to themselves to sort of communicate it much more so that there is increased recognition of this fact. Why is there enough recognition of electric cars? Today, India is selling as many electric cars that it can provide. There is no inventory in electric cars because there is a consciousness. Right or wrong, I'm not commenting. I can debate both sides on electric cars and environment, right? But fact is, people at the bottom line know that if I buy an electric car, I'm somehow helping the environment, right? So communication of that part becomes very, very essential. Trust me, if somebody on any of these companies we are talking about is able to tell that my processes are good for the world, people will buy that product. There's no doubt in my mind, right? But it's about telling them why it is good also. You have to tell them why it is good.
Yeah.
But that's what happens to us, right? Our ability to assess them earlier than my counterpart in the market gives me that edge on price discovery. When they start communicating this data to everybody in the market, the price would have unlocked. That's not the job of a manager.
Yeah.
My job is to sit with each one of them, understand their process, and catch it early on two things: whether they are practicing it properly and whether they will sustain this practice for the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Because if they sustain it, then the result will. At no point of time, and this will be always a very gray area, will you be able to sort of substantiate, because I'm practicing it, this is the output.
Yeah.
But it is for sure that if somebody practices it over a period of time, the output will change. That's what I'm talking about. Now, for us, as managers, we also have to believe it. What you say is correct, because there are enough who don't believe it.
Yeah.
Enough who believe there is enough greenwashing happening. Enough who will say, oh, this is a fad. But there are enough who will rightfully point out, because India is still very thermal based.
Yeah.
Basic fact of ESG is early in India. People who are preaching ESG say the developed market have finished doing enough damage to the environment and now are turning to ESG is something which you cannot discount from an India perspective. So when India is in this growth phase, it is pertinent that a lot of manufacturing industries will continue to damage the environment. Is it right to talk about ESG is a genuine question which over a period of time I have learned to respect to. So there are two sides to the story. It depends on where you are. My take on this whole thing is, if 20 years later this is a reality, then I have to sit on it today to make that alpha. So if you don't believe in it and then you fall for the data to unfold, trust me, the stock prices would have already unfolded.
Right.
The market is smarter than all of us, right? It knows tomorrow. I'm not smarter than the market. If I have to be smarter than the market, then I have to identify an idea and a process far ahead than the other. So it depends on how you look at it. But like you rightly said, there are two sides to the story. From our side, we are very clear that this will lead to efficiency. This environment is being built both from a regulatory perspective as well as the environment perspective. Yes, it will take time for consumers to look at it. Just say we are a 48 lakh industry, just 10 odd thousand crores in ESG funds.
Yeah. Yeah. Very small relative
Very
to
small.
developed
It's
market.
negligible.
Yeah.
But it's because probably we are not talking about it enough. Right? But people who buy it now from a 10, 20 year perspective can stand to gain. And then that's the responsibility, like I said, collective responsibility also to communicate to people that this is a good thing that is happening.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think one point that you made, just to reiterate, is communication. I think that's very critical, and obviously it has to be genuine communication. But if you don't do forward-looking, data-led storytelling, then obviously people will miss. And I think it's a problem for India Inc. that if we don't really create that comparative differentiation, then obviously we may miss out. And I think the other thing that you said is also very important, that one has to look a little bit long term, right? Medium to long term, because in short term, the data may not be that mature enough for you to take a call, but at the same time, there lies the competitive advantage, right? You pick the leaders, right?
I'm actually staggered by, I keep on giving this example because finally it's a business of people.
Yeah.
The inclusivity context of ESG. I mean, we talk about gender.
Yeah.
Gender is a given.
Yeah.
Right? Inclusivity is far higher when we talk about education inclusivity, we are talking about ethnic inclusivity. When you think of all that in perspective, and if it is practiced religiously by an organization, which is a reflection on the society, of a society, you project an organization, it benefits everybody, right? And then when you start reading more and more into what ESG actually stands for, and you read it like a layman, you will conclude that it can only better things can happen out of this.
So in a way, I like the point. I think how can your values create value, right? Because eventually, I think some of you touched that it should be by design, it's your value system. And I think if you follow that, then it should create values, but it will take time. I think that could be the in a way, a trade-off that we would need to be thinking. So switching gears a little bit, I think we talked a little bit about data. So curious, Yugal, again, I'll start with you. How are these new emerging technologies, and I mean both in terms of information technology, the digital technologies, and also hardcore technologies, clean tech that are emerging, do you see they are helping you to accelerate your ambition on sustainability, and how is that helping? So how do we leverage technology to do this smartly, quicker, efficiently?
Yeah, I think to me, for all of this, and to bring out, particularly in my industry, the cost efficiencies which are very, very vital, because we all know that Indian pharmaceutical industry is supplying 20% of the pills to the world. 90% prescriptions are generics, and we are responsible, India is responsible for 20%. Every third American is consuming Indian pill. Every fourth Britisher is consuming Indian pill. We are considered to be vaccines capital of the world.
Yeah.
Vaccines capital of the world.
Pharma capital of the world, exactly.
And we are generics. Let's not forget we are generics.
Yeah.
It means we are competing on price. So therefore, and sustainability.
Yeah.
I think answer to all of these disparate questions is technology. Whether it is IoT, whether it is robotics, whether it is cloud, whether it is analytics, whether big data analytics or AI, ML, the answer lies there. Data, I think the most demanding industry on data is pharmaceuticals. Right from the, we develop the product, we have to collect data. Data integrity also becomes important for us, because of, you are seeing US FDA has come and issued 483 to this plant of Cipla, that plant of Sun Pharma, that plant of Lupin. It's all because of integrity, data integrity. So data at design stage, R&D stage, data at manufacturing stage, data at the supply chain stage, and multitude of data now.
Yeah.
We need to have the data, because our regulator comes and looks at the data.
Yeah.
Demands that data. Not only looks at data, but looks at the integrity of the data. So, data-driven industry has to adopt technology. Otherwise, you cannot run your operations. Otherwise, you can't run operations efficiently. Data-driven industry, as I mentioned, can be sustainable, and that's where these technologies help us. Now we have a term called Industry 4.0 or Pharma 4.0. If you go into details of those, the steps in the pharmaceutical manufacturing right up to the consumption, you would wonder that only answer which is available for all of that is the optimal use of all of these technologies. And largely, as I mentioned to you, this ensures product integrity, it ensures the product is good efficacious, product is efficacious till the last day of its shelf life, and patient gets the benefit what it deserves to get the benefit. And therefore, technology, pharmaceuticals, and sustainability are the three linkages and should go hand in hand. Every company is adopting now because they are seeing business case in it. They're seeing business case in it.
But you see, curious, Yugal, do you see technology providers, IoT providers, when they come to you, do they have sustainability by design embedded? Do they come with systems saying, look, it'll help you measure your carbon footprint or whatever that you're measuring, right? Do you see that? Is there awareness with the tech stack to really deliver that?
It has to be. It is just not carbon. It is, if you look at the certificate of analysis of a pharmaceuticals, it runs into 2 or 3 pages. Every small thing that gets evaluated and every single impurity. You know, you get one aspirin get manufactured. There are 100 odd impurities in the manufacturing of that. All of that has to be measured. And what provides the answer to all of these intricate data requirements is technology. And that's the business reason people are adopting technology. Adoption of technology in pharma is taking place at a very, very fast pace. Even the smaller companies are adopting it because there's a business case for it. Now, if I call a US FDA, if I call a US FDA or EU regulator in my factory, if I show him I have these systems in place and there's a data integrity, means it is untouched by hand. I think trust the data created by these technologies rather than manual.
So just curious, in your product, you're also measuring your carbon footprint. So is that today asked by any regulator?
Specifically carbon footprint, no, the regulator is not that particular. They ask only about the product. But these days, big customers, for example, I have Teva, I have Zentiva, I think they are asking those questions. That is your product, show us the sustainability part.
At a product level.
Manufacturing taking place, and they ask for it. So therefore, we need to provide data for them. And that trend is increasing now.
So that's a good example. Maybe pharma is a good example for others, FMCG and others really learn, because you are so regulated. And as you said, the traceability and integrity of data, I mean, it's a business disruption. I mean, it's not longer an option for you.
I can tell you there is a track and trace. Every single tablet which gets manufactured, every single strip which is sold, can be tracked by the final consumer or the customer whom we supply, because there is a unique code for every single strip which gets tracked, which is so very critical.
Not in India though. Can you?
In India now they have made it compulsory for 300 top brands for the country, and because it is an additional investment. There are people cribbing about it, but I think the advantage of this, the other side is you have 30% of the drugs which are the medicines which are being marketed are adulterated or duplicate and being manufactured in the backyard of some manufacturer in
they will be caught with that traceability.
They will be caught, and you get revenue of 20 to 30% straight.
Right.
If
There is a business case.
That. If there is a business case, but there is a debate going on this aspect in India. But it is must, track and trace is must for all the European exports, for all the American exports. That simply must.
And you will just last point on this. Just curious on the wastage. I think you talked about, right? I as a consumer, my medicine expires, I throw it in the bin, right? I'll be honest. That's what I do. I don't know if there are other better ways. What happens to that waste, and is there a way to recover that, or what happens, or what is the industry thinking? Because there is a big waste that goes out, right, from the consumer side.
I quite agree with you, and I think that's one area which industry has to work. That can that be recyclable? Can we do something about it? What happens to the 10% of the expired product? And there are bad sheeps in the society and the industry where we have seen that some of the
rebranded or repackaged.
They actually this got siphoned out from the expiry, and though there are strict rules now that it has to happen in front of some regulator, the incineration has to happen in front of the regulator. But that's one area which to my mind should be.
But at the consumer end, there is no good leading example in Europe or in US in terms of how would the consumer do with that expired or the not needed medicine. There's no reverse logistics to it, right? Very complicated, I guess. I don't know any examples.
Yeah, there is talk of it. There's quite a lot of talk of it now after particularly ESG and sustainability.
Yeah.
But I don't see any big concrete examples which one can copy, imitate, or implement here. I don't see. This one area still remains to be tackled.
Yeah. No, I know it's a very complex area, right? Because it's fairly distributed. One is from your factory, the other is what happens when Nitesh throw it, right? And
Yeah.
where does it go, or can I return to a chemist and they take it away? But I don't know globally if you're saying there aren't any
Yeah.
reverse logistics.
Yeah, there is work going on, but I don't see great scale or integrated approach which one can pick up, and even though it might be expensive, which one can pick up and implement here. I don't hear much on that count. But there is a growing awareness on that count, thanks to ESG and sustainability, which has come into play now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm sure our children definitely want to see that. Where do they throw it? I don't know what to say, because there are only 2 bins. There is no medical bin, right, to throw, and all waste. Eventually, segregation is a huge issue, and I think a lot of these chemicals are going into that waste.
That's the reason we insist on good demand forecasting. We insist that we manufacture only as much as we can sell. How do we reduce the attraction of manufacturing more and therefore selling more, and then that becomes the responsibility of the trade to handle. There is quite a lot of talk happening on that count, and there are good companies who are ensuring those measures, that we supply, we manufacture as much as actual consumption takes place, but the commercial consideration many times.
Yeah, you're right. And I think as I reflect, I think it's a bigger issue in food waste, right? Because obviously same issue, much colossal. At one point in time, we have people who are poor, we don't have food, and then there is colossal food waste, which a lot of us know that it emits methane, and it's even more dangerous. So I think that is a big issue. I mean, it's for you probably smaller, but I think food and FMCG probably even bigger, right, to kind of control. And
particularly the medicines are still somewhat controlled and regulated.
Yeah, exactly.
In our country, maybe you can buy a product, you go to the retail and you can buy any product, but abroad you can't.
It's regulated,
unless there is a definite prescription in your hand. So that's a little bit of a serious issue in our case, which we need to also.
But just a small observation, especially on pharmacy, because I come from Bhubaneswar, and I can buy 1 tablet in Bhubaneswar. In Mumbai, I can't buy.
Yeah, I am surprised.
Right. I'll be sold a strip.
Yeah.
Okay, when the Odias come here, they tell me, why are you wasting so much of money? But that's how it starts. The day Bhubaneswar starts selling a strip, everything changes.
But why is it different in Bhubaneswar?
But that's against the law.
But yeah, it's against the law, but pharmacies are
against the law. You must understand that the labeling instruction is extremely
it has to be there, right?
And the labeling instruction, the way it is printed, it spreads in the entire strip.
But so, sir, as a consumer, I'll be very honest in confessing that it's just 16 years ago that I was made aware by a Mumbai pharmacist that without this, I can't sell you, and without this, you shouldn't buy. Right? But rest of the country, even today, I can buy 2 tablets. Right, a person is ready to
I didn't know that you can buy. I thought the same thing, that you have to buy a strip.
Because you are from Mumbai, you will not know.
You are incidentally experience.
But
anyway, you're gone.
We are retail guys, okay?
That's around 10 to 20%.
But that's what I'm saying.
The regulator is insisting.
But the seller also has to insist.
Yeah.
Here, the consciousness.
Is the pharmacist complying with the law in Bhubaneswar, or is there a state regulation?
No. There's no state. Across the country,
it is the law.
Cannot sell, but it is very loose. It's not respected.
So the pharmacist is not complying in Bhubaneswar?
The pharmacist is not complying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No, there is an answer available, but it's more expensive answer. You have a single pouch pack which you can create, but the cost of that packaging will be much higher than you buy 10 tablets together. So the rule and the law, which I fully support, is that full strip has to be bought. Now it's for the company to decide the dosage or the packaging as per the dose requirement for this disease which you have.
No, I completely agree with you. Now look at it. I am talking about having a medicine. I am ready to take a risk on a medicine which could possibly be expired and sold to me, right? That's where the consciousness, or I was talking about communication.
But the point, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a very interesting point, right? I mean, but there are trade-offs, right? Because they could be expired medicine sold, you don't have the batch number, traceability is an issue. If you to pull something back, you can't do that because unless it's completely digital and you can scan every nook and corner of a strip, which I don't know that.
This is the track and trace.
Yeah, I mean,
what is track and trace? True. We are doing for all exports.
Yeah, no, but that's...
Someday will come. No, the regulator in our country is also insisting. For years together, industry had not accepted it because it adds to the cost. Track and trace adds to the cost, significant cost. But now, just about 6 months back, they've issued a regulation now that top 300 brand, major seller brand at least, should have a track and trace.
But at a strip level.
At the strip level. Yeah, at the unit what the consumer buys.
Yeah.
And unit what the consumer buys is what the company produces, as a strip or a bottle or a wire.
I think it's a phenomenal debate. Sarup, the point that you made, I think consumer also have to be aware and a lot of consumer awareness. And I think there lies a big challenge, right? To know and then demand, and then I think some of it needs to be debated because some of these practices have evolved from a different era. And someone would say also a lot of people wants to just, keep dumping more, right? I mean, I'll be honest, it may not be in pharma, but in others, right? Because
this has been the selling model of pharma for long, pressure selling.
Yeah.
You the stockist, who's our the supply chain partner, if you can buy for 30 days stocks, we'll push 60 days stocks. Because there are targets of the sales guys who will achieve.
Correct. And there lies the wastage and the sustainability issue. I think, it's a phenomenal debate. It's the same in fashion. We all know circular fashion. I mean, I think if some of you don't know, the circularity in the world is only 9%, right? Which means 91% of the things, believe it or not, we just use it one time, linear way, which is appalling, right? I mean, just to think of it, saying just 9% is the circularity is just where. So anyways, I think moving on, Seema, from your standpoint, digital data, and I know you talked about supply chain partners, SEBI is also asking for a lot of data. How do you get that data, especially supply chain data, right? Because internally you may control, but where do you get data from suppliers? How do you, how should systems evolve and digital technologies evolve?
So we are not getting it. We have to, I mean, there's a lot of push and pull factor, and thanks to the mandatory requirement now that, we know that the givers, they know it's non-negotiable, we have to give data. But operationally it is difficult when you're in a manufacturing setup, when you have about 7 manufacturing units spread across, then suppliers also spread across. So here's a centralization of data, and that too, very without repeating or removing duplications, because what we have learned in the practice that we keep asking same data
in different taxonomy, different forms.
And different people. I mean, that's the reality. So for if you ask me, I'm a headache for my supply chain head or my.
Here she comes again for another set of data.
Seema is a headache, But thanks to technology, of course. But more than that, of course, data point, I see a lot of scope in, I'll give you a real-time example of, we used to use a thermocol in a packaging.
Yeah.
So when we were looking at data and when we did an analysis, we have learned that, this is the biggest chunk that we have, where there's a lot of waste is happening, and not at our level, but at a customer level also. Because just imagine you get this much of bulb in such a big box, and of course if you order through Amazon or any, you'll get such a bigger box. So what are we people going to do with that? So then we have learned how best we could reduce that. And then of course there's an innovation happened, and then we come up with another product. But my point is that decision making is a key factor, at least in sustainability, which is new in the manufacturing. And also, when you have to track your 900 or your 1,000 or more than that suppliers into it. Again, there are challenges. Not all are compliant, and not all are really ready for to share data, or they don't have those platforms that we have. So not all, but at least we are focusing on top 500 or top 200 or 300 or also largest suppliers. So so data is for analysis and also for the decision making that we are looking at. Piece, and the cost also, because when we see we are investing 10 rupees on this, which is contributing more on our emission. What if we invest 2 rupees in invention and how best we could do something. And then we came across the product which we are actually buying only for 500 rupees, environment friendly. That is something, there's a lot of investment, but I think the product was good. Also, there are other factors, not apart from data. The technology is really helping us, because now we have those systems in a manufacturing units, where we get in the HO, where I said I get the alarm. Yeah, okay, so now we have set a target of what the amount of water we are going to use, and there, in case if there is somebody is using more than that, we get an alarm that somebody is using more water or more electricity or
more real-time alerts.
Real-time data. So that is helping, of course.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that could be a great one, because then otherwise too late, right? If you just take the data and react, you can't really act. I think
as he mentioned, there is no point, after getting data what to do. It's better to just control now itself, how best we can do that.
Yeah. So I'm cognizant of time. I know we have a few minutes left. Monica, anything you want to add from digital technologies and data standpoint?
No, I mean, both of them have covered. I will just touch upon the supply chain sustainability, where you asked that how do you get. So supply chain sustainability is comparatively not newer, but it's not that mature. So most of the companies are still building on that. But the gap I see that even if you go with the reporting thing, most of the companies are focusing on the top or the critical suppliers.
Yeah.
And if you see, most of that critical suppliers are the large group companies, and they are already sustainable.
Yeah.
In the sense, comparatively, if you compare with the other small suppliers. So probably they don't need that kind of hand holding. So if I'm getting something in big supplier, I know that they would be following their practices.
There lies the paradox you were saying. Yeah.
So yeah, there lies the paradox. But I mean, because this is a trend and most of the companies are following that, but going forward, probably we need to touch upon those suppliers also, which actually need hand holding. If you ask them that, do you have ISO certificate? Yeah. They would probably, it might be a possibility that they are not even aware of it. So you need to handhold them that once you get this, then...
I think that's an interesting point, because one may argue that the large will become larger.
Yes.
Small MSMEs will struggle, right? And
yes.
you may say, I will not work with you.
Yes.
Because you don't have the resources. So while I know it's a good step in Make in India, right? But it may also have its nuances. But I don't know, it's a debate, because someone will say GST was the same debate, but then industry kind of cope up with it, right? So everyone has now come around.
Yeah. So what I believe, if you got a list, that probably at least include few of those might not be your critical supplier.
Diverse set rather than just
supplier, just to handhold them also to learn about the sustainability. That's the only point. Otherwise, they have already covered.
No, that's good.
Thank you.
Swaroop,
I always find this data debate very fascinating, because in a country where we want certain data, we are the best in the world. It's just the election results round the corner. Look at the speed at which we will get data. Look at the size of that data. Right? It is mind-blowing how quickly, and it fascinates my Koreans, that the results counting start in half an hour. Everybody knows. So wherever we want data, we can get it. Is proven by that one sort of acid test, if I were to put it. Now all these debates are put to rest after two events. One is after demon. We cannot debate that we don't know where the money is. All the cash came to the bank and has gone back, right? So everybody now knows where the cash is, right? After that, there is an Aadhaar, there is a PAN, and there is a GST number. It does not take a very senior or a very skilled coder to put this together, right? Where that tablet is in India, it does not take much skill to sort of get back to. Question is, when will we bell the cat? Once we
whether we want to also, right?
So that I didn't want to debate on that because that's not under my purview. But sooner or later, and it's very interesting since you mentioned the word GST, mark my words. The growth in GST collection will ease out data providing. The more GST is collected, the more this becomes organized, the more it helps us. As organizations, we have to peg down on data pilferage or non-GST happening. You go out here, no? The guy will tell you, ये करने से GST देना पड़ेगा, आप ऐसा करो ना. तो GST नहीं देना पड़ेगा. I literally save my 18%.
Yeah.
But the guy, again like the Mumbai pharmacist, has to stand tall and said no. So somewhere somebody has to be incentivized. If you do more GST, maybe I'll give you a rebate.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very, again, I'd like to go back to my state. On low collection, tax collection months, pre-GST era, our state used to give rebate to people who paid advance local tax. So that sort of prompted it. And then today, there is absolutely no, what can I say, excuse for this country to say data is not available.
Yeah,
And
no,
you
you're
can
right,
get
you're right.
election data in half an hour. There is no excuse. And today, digitized world where everything is here and everybody is on a smartphone, everybody in the world now knows I am sitting here in JW Marriott with my location on, doing this conference, right? So this is a matter of time, and we will not have this debate in 5 years later. 5 years later is my submission.
No, you're right, and I think it's, to your point, it's a competitive advantage, right, for India, because if we can produce traceable data, right, which one can trust in sustainability, saying how much carbon are you consuming, how much water are you consuming, what is the level of circularity, what's your waste, can you track and trace, as you said. I think the confidence of the world to India, and thereby lies the competitive advantage, is great. But it obviously will benefit people who want to do the right thing and play by the rules, but people who don't want to, I think will obviously have a challenge on culture, right? Because today you may not switch on the digital water meter, right? You may draw from anywhere else, but tomorrow you can't say switch on the digital meter because I don't want water to be counted, right? And there lies the challenge.
Yeah, actually, it is already happening.
Yeah.
Because in pharmaceuticals, if you want to export, you have to have a track and trace.
Yeah.
It simply must. Otherwise, you can't export.
Yeah.
So it is happening. So it's a question of time, I feel.
No, that's good. And I think it's a great positive for India, right? Because with the India stack and digital capabilities, hopefully they'll hold, but you rightly said, who will bell the cat and when? It's a matter of that time. Capability is not an issue. So thank you. I think it's a great conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know we have 5 minutes left. Any questions, inputs, any point that we did not cover, I'll open up for limited time. Whoever wants to ask any question so that we could do. Yes, please. Can we have the mic, please, here? Otherwise, we can hear you. There's a mic.
Hi, thank you. Like all the insights and everything you shared were wonderful. So just touching a little, probing a little deeper into what Ms. Srivastav said. So we know that 99% of organized companies in India belong to the MSME sector, right? In the MSME category. Now, in surveys done by Dun & Bradstreet, we have seen that there is a certain level of awareness amongst about ESG amongst these MSMEs. There's also a willingness to adopt ESG practices. But there is a huge shortfall when it comes to the actual adoption. And in one of our recent surveys, we even found that they are looking for direct monetary incentives to adopt any kind of ESG practices. Now, we all know how those can also affect the large companies that are working with these MSMEs. So how do you think, what would be your suggestions into how the ESG practices can be inculcated down to the last supplier, to the last MSME that they're working with, and to drive that entire value throughout that value chain? You know, that's...
Yeah. No, I'll just start and then others may do. I think you're absolutely right. Ultimately, the capacity building and that awareness of MSME, which is the large scale, is critical. And I think Monica kind of touched on it, and I think for the listed companies, as you know, the listed companies now have to work with their suppliers, right, by 75%, which a large part of it would be MSMEs by any stretch. So I think that capacity building will start to happen. But there is also a question, as you said, will it increase cost of compliance or cost of doing business, and someone may have to bear that cost. But I think slowly and gradually we'll get there. Same happened with GST, because someone said, look, if GST is coming, small guy cannot do, but with digital technology you could do. But Suru, please feel through, and any others.
Yeah, I mean, when I reflect on my career, I started when credit rating was just happening in India. And we had the same thing. Will smaller, say I talk for the financial services, will smaller financial services go for a rating? But eventually a good rating leads to cheaper capital. And a good ESG reading worldwide is proven that leads to cheaper capital, or your ability to raise money far efficiently is something which will play out. And once those results start showing up, all this will fall into place, whether you talk about credit rating then or those ISO certification.
Yeah.
Now nobody even questions an ISO certification, it's a given, right? It's just a matter of time that this will also fall into place, because the benefits of this will start playing off in a meaningful way, right? Look at credit rating today. I mean, it's not a question anymore. But in the early 90s, there were enough companies debating, should we take this rating because there's a cost, and if we take this rating agency, the cost is higher, should we take a lower credit rating agency? Then market started differentiating. This will also start happening on the ESG rating, because the rater will start getting a rating from the market. You will start debating whether this rating is better than the other rating. All that will fall into place in period of time. It will happen quicker than we think it will.
Yeah, for example, I again give the industry I represent. 50% of the industry today is exports. And almost 70-80% of the exports are to Europe and to US. And track and traceability is simply must. It is happening. Initially we thought whether it will happen or not happen. It's happening. If you want to be in the business, you will have to do it. Now, of late, the customers, our customers in the US and the Europe, they are demanding the CSR report. The ESG report. What are you doing on the ESG front? And once that happens, I think across the value chain or supplier chain or vendor or the customer, the entire continuum would come around.
Just to take that, the BRR report which happened earlier was voluntary, right? The top 1,000 was voluntary.
Yeah.
We had the top 1,000 companies actually submitting the report voluntarily. So this debate is getting non-redundant, as it was not enforced then, right? Now it is getting enforced, but earlier it was somebody, and the pride, and by interacting with so many people over the last 2-3 years, the pride with which all of them sit down and say, this is what we are practicing in our company, will become infectious. Watch this.
Do you know why we are discussing this today? Because it is a necessity. Every single business review I conduct, the last item, I say it is last item, it should become the first item gradually, but it has to be discussed. What progress you have made on the ESG parameters or sustainability parameters.
You can see the passion of the panelists to really prove it to you that it will eventually create value and competitive. Yes, Monica, then we'll move to the next one if there is any.
So what I think, I mean, reduction in sales is also a cost, right? So for MSME, if the bigger companies put a threshold that I would not work with those companies who doesn't have, I am taking an example of ISO certificate only, okay? So I would not work with those companies who don't have ISO certificate. That means there is a potential that his customer might be lost. And because this is now mandatory for 100,000 of companies, so there is a possibility that he might lose 5 of his customers. So that means gaining those certificates would help him to maintain his customer base, and that's how probably it would help him. Yeah.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Any other question? Yes, please. Can we have the mic, please?
Hello, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see a diverse panel, and I was just looking at the agenda and listening, of course, to all of you, and I realized that, you know, Monica and Seema, the sectors that you represent, there is a huge consumption of resources. And at the same time, you must be having your cost pressures as well, right? So how do you maintain a perfect balance between economic growth and, you know, how should I put this, your social responsibility or your economic, your responsibility, your CSR responsibility?
Again, from practitioner's point of view, keep convincing our CFOs that what we are doing, it is necessary, and negotiating the cost factor. One key factor is, investing. That additional cost is not a cost, but it's an investment that we are making. And so that is one. So keep convincing them and the business team. And as I was said earlier, the alignment of the business goals is most important thing, because we maybe become too aspirational that, we want to be carbon neutral by 2050 or whatever. But we need to know whether we have the capacity, Whether, because one side we're saying carbon neutral 2050, but at one point we are saying, oh, we need to produce million fans by 20, we need to sell. So there is no alignment. So that alignment is most important. And as I said, clarity. Yeah.
And the investor mentioned you have to communicate, right? That's also very, very important, because if you're investing not communicating that how are you future-proofing, I think it's a very, very important point, both internal and external. I think you, Seema, made that point. Yeah. Yes, yes, Monica.
For us, I mean, surely the cement is resource intensive, energy intensive, as well as emission intensive. However, like I said in my previous discussion, that we have got a Brahmastra, which is slag. So that's why like 75% of our total raw material is from recycled material. And that's how, I mean, and same goes with coal. So 10% of coal we are replacing. So whatever you mentioned, that is a risk, but we are turning those risks into an opportunity. So that's how we are building it up. And one, maybe probably the closing remark would also be, so whoever says that sustainability is a cost, I can prove it that how it would turn into a benefit. You name anything, any aspect, be it gender diversity, be it your CSR interventions, because with everything you will gain something, if not in the cost, but reduction of those costs or the direct benefit. So probably, I mean, I strongly feel that sustainability is surely not a cost. So some way or the other way, it would turn into a benefit for sure. Thank you.
I think we'll close at that passionate note that I think it's great to hear from all the diverse panel in terms of the belief that they have, and obviously all of them are proving it for themselves, whether from the real world or for the financial world, that it does pay off itself. So if there are any other questions, otherwise we will, yes, please. Yes, there's a mic, please.
Good evening. I know we talked about the ESG from the manufacturing side. Just wanted to see if we can throw some light on ESG implementation for the IT services. I'm not sure if that's, that's the right forum, but if you can throw
I can take it. See, I think if you see from IT sector, right, there are three pillars, right? ESG, as we all say. I think environment is a very small component, right? There is data consumption on data centers, right? There are high energy consumption, energy intensive. So obviously everyone's trying to convert them into renewable energy to the extent is cost benefit, and a lot of it is. So that's on the environment side. I think water and others, there isn't really much. But I think the big part is the social, right? Because obviously in an IT company, human capital is the most important. And I think that's where a lot of these conversations are, that how we're improving the human capital, how we reskilling people, how we making sure there is diversity in our ways of working, right? And even the extended supply chain, right? Because an IT company works with an extended contractor movement. So how do you make sure the human rights and others are protected? I think there is a bit. And then I think last and not the least, governance, right? Because that's obviously very critical. Even data privacy and others are part of governance now, that you have access to data, consumer or customers, how you're not misusing it and make sure that it's not going. So I think those are the bigger themes, but you're absolutely right. I think the point that you're making is that sector-wise, the material topics are very different. And a lot of time I hear from an IT company talking about net zero and others, and I'll say, look, that's not the core forte. It is social and governance, yes, which is more important. Not to say climate action isn't, but I think social and others are more important. That's the way I have seen it, but I'll let anyone else, if there are any other comments to it, or from investor side, how they look at it.
No, I'll give my personal experience. My son works in the IT sector, one of the largest IT. The way they view him as a human capital is a learning for me. Not only are they interested in which house they stay in, they've made him take a photograph with a selfie with my house number on it, right? They document the human capital down to the last extent, and they practically asked him more questions about himself than we did as parents. And we learned a lot from how to, as
Did you feel a little bit insecure saying you
yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And when you look at these implementations, and we work with most of the IT companies as clients, the way they value the people there, or their outlook on diversity, is very different from, and I'm learning from that as to probably if we can get some of it and start implementing into our organization, it can be a far better place. But I've interacted with some of your counterparts on the IT side. You should see how they talk about ESG implementation in there, because we are talking about large amount of people there. We're talking about 60, 70,000 people in one organization. And then look at their campuses. If one of their campuses, they stop doing IT, they can become a better educational institute. They can become the leading hotels in the country, right? Look at their infrastructure. So their approach to this space is staggering, because they don't have to deal with some of the complications, the manufacturing, but the seriousness about implementing, like they work with the globe, and the globe will not accept them if their scores are low.
And also the whole discussion of employee well-being, mental well-being, right? And ultimately there is a case that the employee productivity increases, the satisfaction increases, the attrition goes down, right?
Because of these mental implications, there is a reason why a lot of IT companies now want work from office.
Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I think we will stop here. Thank you, everyone. And I want to thank my esteemed panelists for a great conversation. I certainly enjoyed the diversity and the real life perspective that all of you threw. Thank you so much.